Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Alex Lawson, filling in for Tom. And we have a lot to discuss on definitely the predictable awfulness of the corporate media is a topic that is truly important. The propaganda machine that is the modern corporate media is immense. In fact, I would say we've never seen a propaganda machine of this immensity, that it is wielded to enrich the corporate interests and the interlocking boards of the corporate media. That doesn't change the fact that it exists to tell stories or not tell stories to advance a specific agenda. And somebody who is an expert at exposing that reality and a truth teller who's fighting back against this corporate media propaganda machine. And a friend of mine is joining us by phone right now, Richard Eskow, the host of the 0 Hour. Richard, thanks for joining us on the Thom Hartmann Program.
Always great to talk to you, Alex.
So, it's been actually somewhat of a harsh first hour, taking calls. And, there's a lot of worry out there because we're in a worrying moment where Donald Trump is basically saber rattling, except the sabers are nuclear missiles. And this is a man that I have zero faith in. And something we were talking about is how the media treated him lobbing missiles into Syria with this basically across the board approval. And that was the first time in his entire administration where he could have turned on the television on any channel, basically, except for Free Speech TV, and seen, positive headlines. And that is that is what exactly is wrong with the corporate media. So that's what we're talking about. And I've continually brought up truth tellers like you and the 0 Hour as the alternative to this system that has got us to where we are today.
Well, we have to have those alternatives, Alex, because it is, as you know, it's actually mind-boggling to watch the uniformity of thought that comes across all these supposedly free and independent media sources, whether it's cable news or major newspapers or mass radio, corporate radio. It never ceases to amaze me, even though I know it's the truth, to see how much all these news outlets act in lockstep. And to me, the perfect example is the one you just gave. What we're seeing with Trump now, what he's doing, Trump is a nightmare as a president, but one of the few things that might have mitigated that was the idea that he wasn't as eager as the sort of whole combined insider group of corporations and national security folks and so on to go to war, as we've seen in the past. But this is almost like he immediately began getting pressure to do it, and now almost robotically they're all congratulating him for dropping the so-called mother of all bombs and for lobbing 59 cruise missiles out of almost 30,000 over the past several years at an airport in Syria. It's as if this was for everything. We heard that the news media were telling us, with Trump as president, we're going to be different, we're going to be braver, we're going to be bolder. You go to the Washington Post, it says democracy dies in darkness. We're going to be the bringers of light. But as soon as he does the thing that reinforces that insider group that the media represents, they can't wait to congratulate him for it, to talk about how presidential he's being, and to set aside all the misgivings that they told us were going to be their reason for existing. It's amazing. It's actually frightening to see how much in lockstep they are on this stuff.
It is. It's also so the supposed credibility that I just want to kind of diagram it or map it a second. There's a reason that it's like, okay, well, we'll play. And I'm not saying that there is like some strategy where they all meet and do this. This is actually driven just by the agenda that they're driving, right? But it's like, so Fox News is here, and they're going to be this overt and awful propaganda machine that drives the Republican Party. And so then Comcast-owned MSNBC is like, oh, well, I guess we're the left-wing alternative to that. And CNN is like, oh, well, I guess then we're kind of in the middle. Just that is like the picture that they present. And yet you're talking about 3 corporate-owned media properties whose job is to sell widgets, not to tell the truth. So like this does not apply to every single host on all of the stations. That is also something that people want it to be very easy, but it's not easy. It is a complex dynamic going on. But the overarching drive of the corporate media to do their job, which is to push the corporate line, and it is a very profound level of propaganda because supposedly you have this ideological dynamic at play, right? And then all of a sudden on these issues like war and peace, this lockstep happens, right? So then it's like, whoa, look, even the left, the right, the middle, they're all agreeing and da-da-da-da. And you're like, no, the corporate media is one thing and it's unsurprisingly agreeing with itself.
Well, and you made exactly the right point, which is, this is not a conspiracy in the classic sense where, they meet in secret. It's what Disraeli used to call a conspiracy of shared values. These folks are all so deeply embedded. It's all they hear at cocktail parties. It's all they hear at meetings. It's all they hear from their experts, who, by the way, on every mainstream media station, including MSNBC, all these generals keep coming on, former generals who are being paid by Raytheon or some other defense contractor that's making money off of all of this. They all believe this stuff. And they live in a world where it's like with economics, when everybody, quote unquote, thought it was a good idea to cut Social Security, or everybody, quote unquote, thought it was a good idea to bail out the banks and require nothing in return. This is the world of the elites that control us. This is the world that filters what we hear or don't hear. This is why we don't hear, in the case of war and Trump, from all the many national security and foreign policy experts who think what's going on is a terrible idea. We don't hear from them because they're not part of this inner circle, and that's the real conspiracy we're talking about, the shared values that drive the corporate media that prevent people from hearing genuinely alternative points of view. That's what we're up against. That's why we need to create alternative voices.
Like the 0 Hour, like the Thom Hartmann Program. And, the point that you're making, Richard and I obviously agree. So we know what we're agreeing about as well. And there's this thing that you brought up that I want to kind of press on, which is I want to call it the conspiracy of the cocktail party, right? That is one of the driving motivators that enables this to happen, right? So it's like, how do you get people to toe this line if there's not one person calling up in the morning? And in Fox News, there is one person calling up in the morning. But for much of the other corporate media, it's how do you get this kind of falling in line? How do people know where the line is? And it's a very soft but profound ability to, it's like, oh, well, I know I won't get invited to that cocktail party or that benefit dinner because this idea is heterodox to that. So like, it is they're sitting around a cocktail dinner party or some gala event, and they're all in their tuxedos, or the White House Correspondents' Dinner of years past, and the accepted parameters of the debate are very clear to people who are there. And so they take those accepted parameters of the debate or of the cocktail party discussion, and they bring them onto air. And that is how you get to this point where, quote unquote, everybody is probably 24 TV personalities, and the corporate PR people who they bring on to tell the same story over and over and over again. Social Security being the perfect example of this billionaire Pete Peterson, who figured out he'll never win the American people over because the American people love Social Security. The American people never want to give Social Security to the billionaires on Wall Street or to destroy it. So he aims at these few dozen people who are the corporate media, and he creates an understanding there of what is the acceptable debate there. In about the last minute here, Richard, how do you think the Zero Hour has this incredibly fast-growing audience, your audience at the Huffington Post, where you can read your writing? There is a change here, and I am very confident that we will win because it's accelerating, where people are starting to search out other truth tellers and spread the word, through social networks or whatnot. Do you think I'm wearing rose-colored glasses on that, or are you seeing the stranglehold of the corporate media loosening?
No, I am incredibly optimistic about it. I was Bernie Sanders' writer on the presidential campaign. That showed that there's a thirst for the truth. What the reaction we're getting with the new media outlets we're creating shows there's a thirst for the truth. People want to know. They recognize the truth when they see it, and then they use it to change their lives.
Richard Eskow. Go ahead, Richard.
That's my belief. That's all I've got to say.
Richard Eskow, the host of the Zero Hour, which you can find at weactradio.com. You can find it at thisisthezerohour.com. You can find it on Facebook, the Zero Hour. Richard is broadcasting live to Facebook and soon to outlets all around the country, even more. You can listen to him on WCPT. So Richard Eskow, host of the Zero Hour, thank you so much for joining us on the Thom Hartmann Program.